I know you've been there now about 3 years, right?
Yes.
So you don't have to call Maria anymore now, right?
No, I'm really comfortable. My staff is great, so we have things pretty down pat.
Yeah, good for you. I know you've been there, and obviously you're doing a great job. Well, the last few weeks have been pretty hectic, so we're going to talk about the different races. And people have been speculating so much about the mayor's race, like who's going to run. And the thing that was interesting, I think it was more like who didn't run, right? Like the Scott Langs, the Tony Cabrals, the big names, people that they thought might run decided not to. People like Joe Lopes, Hugh Dunn, they decided to stay where they are. So I think it's also been almost as much as who didn't run and who did. But let's talk about the people who are in there. Obviously, Mayor Mitchell has decided that he's going to go for the 4-year term. The other names that we have there, Michael Jansen, David Pimentel, Richard Tyson Moultrie, Jose Perez, Michael Medeiros, and Brian Gomes is an interesting one. And I want to ask you about this because Brian Gomes actually pulled papers for councilor at large and mayor. And I know Linda Morad did too, but she kind of settled in with the councilor at large position. So you can pull papers from more than one position, correct?
Yeah, so the way the process works is anyone can pull papers, you can pull multiple, and then we have a deadline to submit your signatures so we can certify those signatures. Once we certify the signatures that deadline was August 16th.
Right.
They have to come back before August 30th just to file officially. Let us know exactly which position they're vying for. So they do have some time there. There is actually nothing in state law that prohibits someone from running for multiple offices. Also nothing in our charter.
Right,
so
I was going to ask you that.
Nothing in our charter. So technically people can, but in this case where you're running for councilor at large and mayor, you couldn't conceivably do both jobs.
Yeah, right.
So,
I think right now, as it stands, I believe Brian Gomes and even Michael Jansen
yes.
right now have the papers out for both councilor
They
at large
have
and mayor.
both. So, they could come back on the 30th and say, hey, I'm just going to file officially for one. I think that the problem that we get into is the cost. If someone, won both races, we'd have to have a special election. You'd have all the, say that person would have to choose one office, and then you'd have to have a special election to fill the other. So now you have a bunch of councilor at large waiting, or you have mayoral candidates. It's not just the next set of guys that would step up, or ladies that would step up and fill those roles.
I know it's a little quirky, but I've always wondered why someone didn't do that. And the only reason why I say that is because, like, if you're a councilor, right, you have to run the same time as the mayor's race, right?
Yes.
So you better win, because if you don't win, you're out. That's what happened to Linda Morad. That's what happened to Brian Gomes back in 2001. They ended up getting back on. But, let's say someone was councilor at large. They could, in theory, run for mayor. And then if they lost, say, well, I'll just go back to the council, right? But again, the opponent will be able to say, hey, make up your mind, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the trouble we get to, the cost to the voters and the cost to the city to run a special election, especially for a seat that's citywide, you'd have to run the election completely over again just for that, position, that role. So I give everyone the same spiel, just think about the impact that it could have on the city. This is like a new phenomenon. I know it happens in other cities and towns all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is something we're dealing with now.
All right, let's talk about some of the other races. We've got councilor at large. You alluded to that in just a moment, or a moment ago, rather. And the 5 incumbents are running again, and I got them listed here in alphabetical order: Ian Abreu, Naomi Carney, Deborah Coelho, Brian Gomes, and Linda Morad. Brian Gomes kind of, making up his mind. Steve Martins, a former Ward 2 councilor, deciding to jump into that race. So you definitely have some familiar names that the voters are going to have to contend with.
Yeah, and again, you want the best candidates out there. You want competitive races across the board. People can't get complacent. And I think there was speculation Steve Myers was going to run for mayor.
Right.
So we were waiting on that until almost 5 o'clock on Friday. What's Steve going to do? Oh, there was a Steve Martin sighting.
Is it true that he kind of ran around at the last minute and got some signatures?
Yeah, he really did. He came into the office about 10 past 4. I had heard rumors and I'd gotten tons of calls beforehand. So it was good just to get settled and see what he actually was going to do. Steve's a pretty good guy. You know, I've gotten
Right.
a chance to know, and that's why I kind of like local a little bit better because I get to know the players. And
Did
you know,
anybody go
and-
down there and say, oh, I'm going to take some papers, and then go, never mind, I'm not going to run?
That happens all the time.
Yeah?
Happens all the time where people take papers, they think it's easy to get signatures because it's only 50, and it's not. It's difficult to get signatures.
Well, and they have to be signatures that are verified,
That are
too.
verified,
Yeah,
and,
right.
and that's part of the problem. Registered voters, they have to be, you know, in your ward if it's a ward race. They have to be registered within the city. Sometimes people sign, and you'd think you'd have those signatures, but it's quite challenging. And then people get the signatures and then decide that it would be too much, and they withdraw. So
Yeah, right.
that happened this year as well. So.
The other names running for councilor at large are Russell Deering, Leo Choquette Jr., Paul Chase, who actually ran for Ward 5 and was unsuccessful the last time, Carlos Felix, Michael Jansen, and Lisa White. Again, Michael Jansen kind of narrowing down whether it's going to be mayor or councilor at large. The other race is very interesting. We do have a few others. I'm going to start with Ward 4 only because there's something like 6 or 7 people running in Ward
Yeah.
4, maybe even more. Dana Ribeiro is actually going to be on the show next week to talk about Ward 4. She decided not to run when she first ran. She said, hey, I'm doing 3 terms, and then that's the end of it. So now we've got a lot of different names floating around out there, and wow, that's a lot of people in a ward race.
Yeah, and we actually had about 12 that pulled papers for Ward 4. And with Dana, you know, not running again, I just think, you know, people thought the seat was open and they're just putting their names in the hat. And again, it's good that there are people that are willing. I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, there are some good candidates out there. So, you know, that'll be an interesting one. It really
You know,
will.
one name that I had heard, but actually I don't see it on my list, and I don't know if it's on your list, but JoJo Forts. People were speculating that maybe with Dana dropping out, JoJo ran a couple of times, maybe he would put his name in
JoJo
there.
did submit
Okay.
signatures. So
All right.
JoJo is running.
All right.
So yeah, he's part of. He hasn't filed officially yet, but he has, you know, turned in his papers and we certified his signatures. So
All right.
he's all set in that regard.
We have a number of uncontested races. Maria Giester in Ward 2, Hugh Dunn in Ward 3. No, actually, Hugh Dunn has an opponent. It's Scott Lima and Joe Lopes, those three, 2, 5, and 6 unopposed. And in Ward 3, Hugh Dunn has an opponent, Guy LaRocque.
Yes.
So we have a preliminary election there. And in Ward 1, we have a preliminary election. William Brad Markey, he is the incumbent, and he is being challenged by Melissa Scott, who came in second last time in the preliminary election, and Dan Costa, who came in third in the preliminary election. So we kind of have a rematch there, right?
Yes. So yeah, and again, Ward 1, really strong candidates. I've gotten to know Brad a little bit over these past couple of years. He's a really good guy, really good counselor, and also Dan and Melissa from the last time that they ran. That was actually my first year, and again, just interacting with all of them. That's a really interesting race. It really is.
Well, speaking of interesting, you are the election commissioner. You have been there for 3 years. I'm sure people come up and say, hey, Manny, what do you think about this? Hey, Manny, what do you think about that? And you really have to be kind of neutral and kind of like stand back and go, you know, I have some thoughts, but
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that to myself because I don't want to inadvertently come across like I'm trying to influence the election or something like that, right?
You know, we treat everyone the same that comes into our office. It's a nonpartisan, like, you know, we just give the people the information. We help as much as we can. So we're really there to support. My staff, like I said, is wonderful. So they're really helpful. But no, we're not pulling for anybody. We're not, you know, it is what it is. The people have their vote. And, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, you're pulling for so-and-so. And, you know, my job is to make sure that the votes get processed and we do a good job. And, you know, the votes are secure and everything is runs properly. And that's really what we
right.
focus on.
So the next big date is August the 30th. What has to happen by August the 30th?
People have to file officially by August 30th. Then they have a couple of days to change their mind. So September 3rd, they can come in and withdraw. They have to come in and fill out some paperwork and withdraw if they'd like. And like I said, we had someone this year already withdraw. They filed their paperwork, they filed officially, and then got a job out of town and decided not to run. So that does happen.
Well, there's something that we didn't know. I thought August the 30th was like kind of like the drop dead thing, but actually there is a little bit of wiggle room after that to say, hey, you know what, something came up or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's something that we didn't know. All right, Manny, it looks like you're definitely busy over there. Although people have to realize that you're not only busy on election year, there's all kinds of stuff going on in between, but now you're more visible, right?
It's year round. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm really popular the next couple of months, and then I get to kind of stay in the background. But I mean, it's constant census, budget,
Right.
just planning. We'll be planning for the presidential primary next March.
Yeah, right.
So that starts right after this is over, petitions. It's just really constant. So we're always moving where I was going.
Well, we're going to invite you back, I hope, shortly, maybe in the next month or so. We'll have you come back, get a quick update, and see what's going on over there. But I know you've been really, really busy, doing a great job. We appreciate you taking time to stop by New Bedford Guide Weekly.
Anytime.
All right.
Love being on.
All right, Manny DeBrito, he is the election commissioner, and he visited with us here on New Bedford Guide Weekly.